Welcome back to our opening plenary on the second day. I think we have everybody ready, and perhaps we could just close the doors. We start with a keynote address from someone who is very important to the UNEP Finance Initiative. He's the new leader of the UN Environment, the new director, replacing Achim Steiner. It is, of course, Erik Solheim. For those of you who don't know Erik's background, he is Norwegian. He is a former cabinet minister, both for international development and for the environment, and has been involved for many years in international politics, from trying to solve the civil war in Sri Lanka to thinking with the OECD about how aid gets best spent. I'm delighted to invite him to the podium now to talk about his views and his visions of UN environment going forward. Erik.
Good morning to everyone. Very happy to be here in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. Let me start by thanking the Emirates and Dubai for bringing us together. I have to say that coming from Norway, and as you said, that's a raw material-based economy. I take the view that overall in the world, those economies with no raw materials are doing the best. I mean, the Singapore, the Koreas, the Japans of this world are the best performers economically. So United Arab Emirates is the exception. And what has happened here is simply absolutely fabulous. And we should kind of celebrate that. In the 1970s, as you will know, there was nothing basically in Abu Dhabi or in Dubai. Now we see some of the most prosperous, well-functioning societies on the planet. Enormous transformation using the oil revenue to start renewable energies, the best airlines in the world, diversifying into tourist business, and United Arab Emirates also now becoming the biggest provider of development assistance per capita in the world. Still a very well-hidden fact. When I told people, my colleagues in the OECD, this is true, they said, no, it cannot be true. Must be Sweden, or Norway, or maybe Luxembourg. But it cannot be the United Arab Emirates. Well, the statistic speaks for itself. United Arab Emirates is at 1.2% of the GDP for development assistance, the highest performer everywhere on the planet, and far, far, far above nearly all nations within the OECD. So the admiration for this transformation based on the income from oil, but moving into tourism, airlines, renewable energies, development aid is simply admirable, and I wanted to set out this fact as I'm beginning today. Then moving to the topic which we are talking about. On the plane here, I read an article in the last issue of The Economist. It was written by a person known to all of you. His name is Barack Obama. And was so refreshing. At the time when we are all watching an election campaign in the United States, which is just about turning dirt to the other, no conversation on the real issues of our time, to see the American president setting out his vision for the economy of the United States, but by extension for the global economy, and making a strong, strong pitch for why we need an inclusive economy, and let me add, an inclusive green economy. So please read this piece and be somewhat inspired and get back your hope that the world can change. I attended a meeting in Washington a couple of weeks back where the same Barack Obama spoke. And he said, my two young daughters, I think the names are Sasha and Amalia, do not understand the concept of acid rain, he said. Acid rain, as you would all recall, was the main environmental issue of a generation in Europe and the United States. It destroyed the nature in my nation, Norway, for 100 years. We had no salmon in the rivers of southern Norway for 100 years since the Industrial Revolution started. Now the salmon is all back. And the two young, beautiful daughters don't understand the concept of acid rain because the problem is resolved. There is no acid rain anymore in the United States, nor in Europe. And please come, if you are if you do like fishing, come to see the rivers of southern Norway. May not be as beautiful as your home place, but still quite a nice place, and you can do fishing for the salmon there, which you have not been able to do for 100 years. So the issue is, how come the issue of acid rain does not exist anymore? In my view, because three different movements happened at the same time, and that's what we should take as a lead if we want to resolve environment issues. Number one, there was a strong citizens movement in Europe and the United States basically saying, we cannot live like this any longer. I want to admire the nature. I want my children to be able to use this fantastic beauty of the land. So they put pressure on the system for change. Then politicians come in, pressured by the public opinion, starting regulating the market, setting targets, not telling the industry what you should do exactly today, but what you do today, what you do in 5 years' time, and what you do in 10 years' time, and enforcing these policies. And then thirdly, you utilize the enormous capacity and talent and ability to change of the private business, the innovative capacity of business for this change. And I will claim that basically wherever on the planet we see positive moves for the environment, all these three are there at the same time. Citizens movement, brave politics and leadership, and the ability of the private sector and business. 2 weeks ago, we met the global community in Kigali in Africa, in Rwanda. And we decided to phase out the so-called HFCs, which are the very dangerous climate gases we have in refrigerators and air conditioning systems. We got them there for a good purpose, because the Montreal Protocol from 1987 resolved the issue of the ozone layer, the ozone hole, the enormous threat to humanity coming from the fact that we had created a hole in the ozone layer, getting very dangerous radioactive, radiation to planet, and had a skyrocketing number of skin cancer cases. One of them, by the way, was me. So we resolved that problem. And we have reduced the number of cases of skin cancer by 2 million per year because of the success of the Montreal Protocols. By the way, the most successful of all global environment agreements, and I think probably the most successful of any agreement on planet Earth, whether it's trade, whether it's disarmament, environment, whatever it may be, peace. We have hardly any global agreement which is implemented to the letter, where all the money promised has been flowing, and where we now see the beautiful results of this, which is that the ozone layer is coming back, and we expect that hopefully by 2050 it will be back in the standard it was before we caused this problem. But some of the gases we did replace from the point of view of not causing harm to the ozone layer was harmful to the climate. We did not know it, but now we know it. And then we decided in Kigali that we also need to phase out the climate gases in refrigerators and air conditioning systems. And again, an enormous success. By this Kigali Agreement alone, we have reduced global warming by up to 0.5 degree. There's no other agreement whatsoever who could achieve this. Cost is low, potential gain is enormous. And it happened again because of exactly the same 3 factors which were behind the success of acid rain. There was a strong public opinion in the world for change. We saw the leadership of President Obama, President Xi, Prime Minister Modi of India, the Europeans, well, the Latin Americans and the Africans. We all came together and agreed jointly to fix that problem, but we needed the leadership from the highest level. Negotiators they can, sorry to say, they can negotiate for another 100 years. They're nice people, good people, dedicated, hardworking people, but there is no stop to negotiations unless you have the high-level political leadership. So again, citizens' movement, political leadership, and then employing the forces of the market for change. I'm in not the slightest doubt that Chinese, American, Indian business will remove the problem as long as they get the right direction from political leadership. And if these are the three main components for all political change, we need to figure in how to use them. And that's why I'm starting with citizens' movement. If you believe that you need the support of citizens, well, then you need to start speaking a language people can understand. That's why I've decided that we will speak about United Nations Environment, or UN Environment, rather than UNEP, and rather using all these acronyms which we are using all the time, and which frankly no one out there understands. Use your mother criteria. I use that all the time. Can my mother understand what I say? If she can, I know that I'm on safe grounds. She's not stupid. Very intelligent, 92 years old, following global politics, taking a strong view on many issues. But she is not a UN insider, nor, by the way, a banker insider. She understands plain, simple English or Norwegian language, and that's what we need to speak if we want to engage with people. There will be 50 million Americans voting for Donald Trump in 2 weeks' time from now on. Even if he loses strongly, still there will be 50 million people voting for him. We need to reach out to these people. We cannot just have a conversation of the already converted environmentalists. We need to reach out to everyone. And then we need to speak a language they can understand. And we need to focus in on environmental problems where people take an interest, like, for instance, pollution, the horrendous plastic pollution of the oceans, the fact that 7 million people on planet Earth are dying prematurely because of pollution in our cities and other areas. Secondly, it's all about citizens, yes, it's all about leadership. Let's zoom in on one of my favorite examples of leadership. In the early 1960s, a young man, his name is Lee Kuan Yew, became the Prime Minister of the state of Singapore. It was a very poor place. It was so poor and dirty that no one dared to walk the streets of Singapore after night. It was as poor as any part of Africa is today. The GDP per capita in Singapore was $500 US. Lee Kuan Yew was standing on TV weeping. Singapore had been thrown out of the Malaysian Confederation, and he had no real idea what to do. When Lee Kuan Yew last year passed away to God, Singapore competed with Luxembourg or Switzerland of being the richest nation on the planet in the lifetime of one man. True, 5-6 million Singaporeans contribute to this, but it could never, ever happen if it had not been of the visions of this sort of leadership. And by the way, they also were in the forefront of many sorts of environmental leadership. You all know what was the first nation we did say? It's not written in the United Nations Human Rights Declaration that you have the right to go to the city center with your own car. If you want to go there by car, maybe you should fill it up. And maybe you should pay some fee for going to the city center so that we can use that fee to make a mass transit system. Well, that happened, as far as I know, first in Singapore, and again, because of the visionary leadership of Lee Kuan Yew and others. Singapore River was one of the most polluted on the planet. Now it's more or less completely clean. Again, because they said, we don't want industries along the river. And they said, we don't want even pork production along the river. As you know, the Singaporeans are Chinese. The Chinese, by and large, are great pork eaters. They eat more pork than anyone else on the planet. So moving pork production industries was not an easy proposition. But again, the leadership was there to make it happen. And of course, I can go around the clock without the leadership of Deng Xiaoping in China. For sure, China will still have been a very poor place. I mean, think of what had happened if the Gang of Four had remained for the next 30 years, rather than to see this fantastic transformation of China. So it's all about citizens, all about political leadership, and then the topic of today is also all about the markets and about the private business. And let me do a mea culpa to you. I'm not immodest. I believe I've got quite a few things right in my political life. But the one thing I for very long got wrong, coming from a left-wing background, was the role of the private sector and business. And for very long there was an idea out there among environmentalists and among development specialists that private sector was the problem. But this is turning everything on its head. The reason Burundi and Madagascar are very poor is not that they are overexploited by the private sector. The reason they are very poor is that there is no Samsung or Google strategy for Burundi and Madagascar. There is no heavy investment in the places. That's what creates the poverty. And we turned for very, very long everything on its head, believing that, yes, true, some private sector companies were exploiting a place, there were usurpers, and that created poverty. And for sure, that was true in some specific circumstances, say in the mining sector and elsewhere. But overall, it was completely wrong. The right perspective is the opposite. The more we see private investment, the more we see the engagement of business, the more prosperous a place will be, and also the easier it will be to resolve the environment problems. What we want to achieve, in my view, is very simple. Is green, inclusive capitalism. There's just one economic functioning system on the planet today, capitalism. Comes in different variations. It's not like the Chinese sort of capitalism is exactly the same as the American, which is not exactly the same as the Arab capitalism. There are differences, but overall there is one global system, and whoever really want to develop and whoever really want to resolve environment problems must make sure that we get green, inclusive capitalism. That's, by the way, what Barack Obama is speaking about in this interview or this article in Economist. So it's not about everything else, it's about green, inclusive capitalism. We quite often get this wrong in the UN. We speak as if climate change is a kind of pledging conference, where the global community comes together to pledge money for climate purposes. And we speak about the small money, which is, say, the $10 billion in the Green Climate Fund. That's essential. We need the Green Climate Fund, but it will be a complete waste if that Green Climate Fund is basically given out as grants. Only if it can leverage, work with a much, much bigger money in the private sector, only then it can be helpful. And at the end of the day, it's not about the special bonds. We need green bonds for sure. It's not the special activities we do in the green sector. It's not about the different instruments we make for the global support for climate change and the environment. It's about the functioning of the capitalist system as such, how we can drive that towards the green, which means it must be regulated, which means that we must involve the stock exchanges, the central banks, all the regulators of the market. But it also means that we need to reach out in a completely new dialogue with bankers, with insurance companies, leaders, with all those who are driving the private sector. Individual companies can drive far. Those who are market leaders and inspiring other people are very often doing good business. And you need this interface or interaction between those who are driving from the inside the market system and those who are regulating the market system from outside. And by the way, regulations will nearly always be the best if they are informed by those who are in the marketplace themselves and know it in and out. There is a system failure, however, with capitalism, or maybe two. One system failure is that it's not inclusive enough. The potential profits for a few are so big that they tend to drive the system inclusive, which is dangerous, and it against the purpose of the system in itself. The other system failure is on the environment. It can be described like the following. The profit of destroying the environment is nearly always privatized, while the cost of destroying the environment is nearly always socialized. Meaning that I, as an individual, or my company, or even in some cases my nation, can benefit from the destruction, the short-term benefit of destroying the environment. The costs are put to the taxpayers of my nation, or to foreign nations, to the world at large, or most importantly, very often, to the next generation to be picked up. That system failure must be fixed to get green, inclusive capitalism. At the end of the day, what we really want to aim at is to make the accountants those who are fixing the system. We make the green so ingrained in the system and in the thinking and in the regulating that the accountants are checking out that we are doing right. No company of any size in the entire world can work without disclosing its financial risks of different types, how it's operating, how its finances is working, and the accountants are checking whether that is right. When we are at the place where the accountants are doing the same checking for the environmental disclosure, then we are at the right place. What are the problems? One problem is the mismatch between the enormous amount of money out there, many investors running around really not really knowing where to invest, and on the other hand, the many programs and projects and good ideas which are out there, but which investors do not find investable. How can these be matched? Money is not the problem. The world is awash with capital, and ideas are not the problem as such, but it's bringing these together, which is a problem. This is about risk. Private sector investors believe that risks in moving into new areas are too high, maybe currency risk, maybe political risk in some parts of the world, maybe risk in doing something which has not been done before, maybe easier to calculate the risk if you do what you did yesterday and the day before yesterday than to calculate the risk if you move into renewable energies or climate smart agriculture or mass transit system or whatever the world may need. And it's not just about the risk, it's also about the short-termness. Those who are owning the stocks demand short-term profits. Regulating of markets are also quite often on a short-term basis. And there is the mismatch between the long-term view of the sustainable development goals, which can for sure not be achieved in one day, not even in a decade, only in a longer perspective, and the short-termness of the way the modern capitalism is working. So to put this short, and I'm speaking about issues which I know you know much better than me, I tend to believe that probably I know more about wars and conflicts than about the way the financial markets are working, so you are the experts on this. But I'm a firm, strong believer in the power of the market, the innovative capacity of business, and we need to work together to find the solutions. And as I understand it, risk and short-termness are some of the main issues which we jointly need to fix. Just to round up with an example of the enormous power of private sector. Last 2 or 3 weeks back, I was in China, and we met up with a company called Ants Capital. Ants is an offspring of the Alibaba group, which you all will know. Ants have 450 million customers doing financial services, and the starting point is 1 yuan, which is the less, I mean, something like an eighth of a dollar, something like that. It's nothing. You can do financial transaction from nothing. You can buy the green bonds from a mobile phone. You can do any sort of transaction. But they also need to engage with the people in going green. And they start a system where you can have a competition. Let's say you want to compete with each other on who is the greenest. Well, one of you will walk to the job today. You will get some points from ants. Some will buy when you buy the new refrigerator, you will buy the most modern, energy efficient one. You will get some point. Very soon you will get a tree on your mobile phone. This is my son, not a tree, but leave that aside. You will get a tree on your phone. And as soon as you got a tree on your phone, ants will plant a physical tree in Mongolia, the driest part of China. And you will get the GPS coordinate for your tree. You can go and embrace your tree. You can have the Erik tree in Mongolia. And if I'm very, very, very environment friendly, I can have the small Erik forest in Mongolia, and I can go to the capital Hualto in Mongolia to see what they are doing. Point here is, of course, that except maybe for President Xi Jinping himself, there is no one with such an outreach as this company with 450 million customers on the cellular phone. Their ability to engage with people is far beyond the UN or non-governmental organizations, or even indeed most businesses. So if you want to progress on the environment in the world of today, we need all these three: the citizens' engagement, brave politicians who regulate the market and give the vision for where we want to go, and employing the enormous capacity and innovation power of the market. And let's continue over the years to come to walk on all these 3 feet: citizens, politics, and market. And thank you so much for coming here.